All right, good morning, everyone. We're 9:02. Like to call the meeting to order. Did everyone have an opportunity to review the March 26, 2024 meeting minutes? If so, can I have a motion to approve the March 26, 2024 meeting minutes? Tom? Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. And then we got Jim. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to go to solid waste and recycling updates for the financial update, and I'll send it over to Greg.
Yes, good morning, folks. So we're at the time of the year where we're able to, we closed out really the first quarter, the first 3 months. And we're able to sit down with both Keith from Finance and Cindy from the Treasurer's Office to go over our closeout of 2023. As we knew, 2023 was going to be tight going into it, and it was a little tighter than expected. We missed our revenues by a little over $100,000 that we had been projecting, and our operating expenses were greatly with additional expenditures in 2023, more than what we had anticipated, especially when we looked at capitalizing and our other deferred payments. Debt service and cell development was not included in the overall budget. So you have a $1.1 million deficit for last year, along with a little over $5 million expended from the reserves last year. As we've been saying for a few years, and that brought up the two of the cornerstone studies and the look at a partnership. There have continued to be a lot of volatility in the waste market and recycling markets. We had not addressed tipping fees because of potential partnerships. And we kept a bunch of other fees lower with our municipal partnerships, particularly on biosolids, punch cards, and those all moving forward need to be addressed in the near term. ARC continues to do a great job operating below their budget. We're budgeted for over $1 million and kept their operating cost at $878, which is no small feat for a very small, tight operation, doing what they do. And they've been a great partner, but all said and done, we still lost over $666,000 on our recycling markets, and running that operation. All that, each line item I was able to attach for you, go over with Keith. This is exactly what they'll be presenting to the full board as our final auditable finances. And moving from that, we will need to move into a tip fee discussion. Attached in your packet is a proposal that I made for adjusting tip fees. I started looking at this immediately in February, knowing that we would need to do something moving forward. So moving forward, anybody have any questions on our current budget, the revenues, what we're forecasting, what is there, and what our potentials are?
I just had one question. What is other post-employment benefits? What are other post-employment benefits?
That's the retiree health insurance.
Okay. Okay.
And that's just recorded as a long-term liability on the books for them. So that's really all that is. And we only see that in the enterprise fund here when because they are on a full accrual basis, whereas the other funds in the financial report that goes to the state comptroller that Luann has or will be sending everyone, you won't see it there, but on the audited financials, it is something that we have to report as a liability across the county as a whole.
Okay. And the same thing for depreciation expense, the other
So depreciation, yeah, again, in the other, all the other funds, the general, the highway, you know, and so forth. That's kind of carved out. And so we record all of the capital asset activity in its own separate K fund. But because the landfill is in an enterprise fund, you see it right incorporated in with their financials.
Okay, thanks, Cindy.
Any other questions for Greg? All right, we'll move on to the landfill gas collection and dewatering project.
Well, do you want to touch
Sure.
on the tip fees? Because that's some.
Do you wanna?
So moving on,
Sorry,
for,
Nancy.
in the budget, discussion here, looking at 2024 as we are right now, we are slightly off on first quarter revenues. And expenses. We're off by about $20,000 in first quarter revenues of 2023. But are seeing an increase in some of that activity, the financial activity going up with Syracuse haulers taking in over the HR contract, and that MSW coming in at the non-contracted higher rate. So that is ticking up. Okra's ash is actually up a little bit. And I actually had to email them this morning because to stay underneath our 10,000 tons, we'll have to dial back about a load a week right now to keep them below our permit or acceptable limits. So we don't have another issue like 2016. So going back through and looking at our potential revenues based off the line items we have, I am proposing $130 tip fee flat across the board. Moving it so that we get rid of the ambiguity of haulers, who's paying a contracted rate, who's paying a non-contracted rate, who's getting preferential treatment for doing single or dual stream versus single stream, and making it so all the haulers sign the same contract, along with proposing a $35 a ton tip fee, to help start balancing out on recyclables, the MRF costs. I know it seems pretty extreme, but in that secondary spreadsheet, I showed you the revenues. We have the potential on an annual basis to raise revenues by a little over $2 million to help us balance the budget and put enough away from reserves. So that will give you roughly $1 million on potential for putting into reserves or capital investment into landfill and transfer station infrastructure. The biggest, again, the biggest leveling field would be that all the haulers would be paying the same rate as of July 1st. Because we have open contracts with them right now. They have to do their hauler permitting annually and have it in place for July 1st. So we give them time to notify their customers. The only other ones that we won't be able to adjust rates are our fixed contracts. So our biosolids folks, we would have to phase that in for our municipalities because they have signed contracts that are on an annual agreement. And are working on mid-cycle budgets, so being kind to them. Okra's ash, we cannot play with or touch the contract until 2027 when it gets an escalator. And then there's a potential of 2 4-year extensions on that. So there's a potential of that contract being locked in still through 2035. There any questions on tip fee potential revenues? This is something that we should look at putting a resolution together here for May, the May committee, and having approved in the June board for execution and contracts for July 1st.
And Greg, the revenue numbers that you're talking about, that's on for an annual basis? So it'd be like July 1 of 24 to June 30, 2025?
Yeah, so on the revenues, yes. So if that was a full year based off of 2023's tonnages, that would have been the realized revenues of $2.3 million. Since we're going mid-year and only able to raise the rates on MSW, C&D, and asbestos-based waste, non-friable, those materials, you're looking at roughly $1 million based off of the tonnages we bring in on a mid-cycle tip fee increase.
$1 million for 2020, the rest of 2024. Is that what you mean?
2024, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. So since we're going at that mid-year, you're looking at a potentially half the revenue potential.
Any thoughts or discussion? Evan,
It's a lot.
it is a lot.
It's a big jump. And I mean, I understand the financial necessity for it, but it's a big jump. And I think it'll have, I think there was some discussion at the committee chairs meeting last week about, what would the real impact be on residents who were under these, who were the secondary impacted by the contracts that change. I don't know. Is there any information out there or any kind of it doesn't seem like it's an unknowable thing historically. You'd think that must be somebody researched it and said, okay, if you raise tipping fees by $20 per ton, 3 years later, the impact will be on residential fees. I mean, there's got to be some delta between the two.
It's again, that's a private sector industry that they, will either put it into their hauling division versus, how they do that. Some will subsidize it by other accounts. Right. That everybody who had Syracuse haulers at the beginning of the year at the bottom of their billing statement said your rates were increasing due to Okra's increases. They mistakenly got put onto Syracuse haulers, Madison County's billing, but right. So nobody knows what that true lever is and how much they're going to, either wash into their collection or, tip fee based.
And how does it compare to the counties right around us? That's the other issue, I think.
Okra's base rate is already over $100. Oneida Herkimer's still at 65. 65 to 68, but their economies of scale, that is roughly 300,000 ton of waste. Plus a whole lot of ADC, additional, contaminated soils from the Utica market and all the development they have. We don't have those markets. We have a fairly low tip fee for soils. I have not moved that because I'm trying to court it in, because that is where we have room to accept some out of county waste and use for cover that doesn't have all the impacts that the ash has, but they're just not, because we are so small and I can only do such a small percentage of our total waste stream as ADC before it impacts our total tonnage. It's hard to get haulers to want to bring it in here.
Can I get go ahead.
Well, of course, the other side of that could be to take in more trash to get more revenue. So you need about 30,000 more tons, which is going to take a few years to get the permit to do that. But certainly another avenue to approach is to take in more material. The one thing that I know, I've been talking to villages, and I'm sure Roseanne's going to tear your head off, is, one time we were not very long ago, just a few years ago, our biosolids were $45 a ton. And at that time, they wanted to put more moisture in the landfill to produce more methane gas. I mean, that's been a thing that a lot of landfills have done over the years, and EPA even pushed that at one point. And now we're at 130. Your sewer rates are going to go up by probably 40 or 50% in these villages. So, just the repercussion, you're going to have a load of people at these meetings coming up, when you do that.
Well, one thing too is to be, on the village side, and obviously being a board of supervisors, form of government, working with the villages, you guys would set that rate. So Greg could recommend it, but you could say, no, we're not going to do that. So, but I think for the haulers though, you got to look at something. I know the one thing that was very clear on December 19th from the people that were here, they were saying the same thing. We want our landfill to stay the same. Increase rates. So that's, I mean, the increase that's high. And there's other factors, there's other things we can do. I know Otsego County does a assessment on their property tax bills for tonnage for residential and businesses. That's another thing you can look at. It's a potential, but we got to do something because the influx of additional waste, to your point, is not going to hit potentially 3 years from now, but we have cash issues now. So we got to do something. The question is what, how much you want to go.
And it's following the matrix that Cornerstone laid out for us twice, right? At our current tonnage with the current services, right? Keeping everything whole, continuing your constituent services of recycling alone for us, right? They anticipate $1 million annually on our budget, right? You're about 1.3 million by the time we do containers, green bins, education, outreach, HHW, electronics, sharps at the hospital, right? All these things we cover that people don't recognize are included in our fees is a little over $1 million a year, 1.3. And then you add in salaries and all that. We have a $1.3 million salary just on the staffing level we have right now. That's not even being full staffed. So how do we maintain those services, our people, our core business without addressing our rates?
I'm good, thank you.
Because I don't think anybody wants to cut transfer stations or things like that, those natures. That's the other thing you do is looking at reducing services, which would not be
All right, I will
popular.
let him know that you called me.
especially-
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, come on now. I think it's everywhere.
Picking on you today.
I know.
They're busy.
Yeah.
They're extremely busy, right?
Yeah. Well, from talking to Greg earlier, I thought there was going to be also, Mark, you were going to make a proposal about increasing individual other types of fees to help.
Yeah, that's it. Secret kind of. Do you have anything on that, Greg?
That I had that under other business. You would be leading off down the agenda, since that.
Well, it's all relative though. I think you
Yep,
can bring
we
it
can
up.
jump. So
It's a fee.
there are several models. The two that I have followed in the industry for a few years, and the most prevalent one that I am most experienced with is the Tompkins County model, right? This program, we've had a long working history. It was then Barb Ekstrom, the executive director for Tompkins County that Jim worked with. She was very progressive, very knowledgeable. She came into the industry at the time when they were closing their landfill, but needed to find financial models to sustain all the progressive programs that Ithaca predominantly, but Tompkins County had. And it's a user fee model. And it started low, everything increases over the years. It started at roughly $35 a household in Tompkins County, plus business and college fees and university level fees. And it's grown to today, it's $80 a household in Tompkins County. Businesses have a different assessment model, and the universities, they just worked with the West Group, a law group, on doing reassessing the universities. 5 students equals 1 unit for Tompkins County. So right now, I do have those numbers. Where did I put it? There it is. Cornell has 25,898 students. They pay $414,000 in user fees for supporting the recycling outreach and education. Ithaca College has 4,600 students. They pay $73,000 in user fees. So if you break that down for us, we are a huge dynamically different. Colgate only has 3,100 students. what we, that we're not going to balance our programs off of the universities, nor would they
Can I have that
like us
picture?
to do that. Morrisville only has 1,800 students.
What about the business side, like a
I
Walmart,
don't get
Greg?
paid now.
They didn't, I tried getting the actual matrix for that and I'd have to talk to the West. We have to get with West Group. Barb Ekstrom has
because she was on
retired and moved to
vacation.
Colorado, who set that up.
Right.
And they're in
All right, so I
record
will
and
have,
all
How,
that.
Joe, how was it Siegel County?
Thank
doing?
you.
They-
Bye.
They were doing unit fees on.
They also, they work that through square footage on their assessment office. So that's in your packet. I have both the Tompkins County model and how they share. I really do like the transparency and sharing. They did a pie chart on where those revenues go and how it's used in the community. Again, $80 is a little ridiculous. Otsego County started back in the day. It was MOSA. It was a partnership between Montgomery County, Otsego County, Schenectady County, and Albany County, where they joint landfilled. That partnership fell apart because the counties could not agree and work equally. That fell apart in the late 90s, early 2000s. By 2014, it was fully taken apart through legislature process. So they maintained a $35 fee from 1995 till 2014. Once MOSA was dissolved, Otsego County kept the fee in place, but it's only at $30 per resident right now.
And how is it collected? Where?
Through tax. It's so it's occupied housing. So, but also includes churches, schools, nonprofits, all pay it. It's in.
Yeah, it's
sent
Not a tax bill.
Okay,
as a separate fee. And that model, the background, the history of the program, their law is all in your packet also.
Not the packet, but it would be on the
It's on
the Novus board.
Novus board.
okay.
Yeah,
I
okay.
didn't
All the
get that
different-
far.
I couldn't print out everything. Go against my tree saving abilities.
So have you figured out what, if we were to charge, let's say 30 times the residents that we have right now and the businesses, do we have any projections on how much income that might raise for us?
30 times 35,000. Resident,
Well, but
households.
residents and businesses and,
households, 30 times 35,000 households, and then you have to figure out a business matrix. So you're a little over $1 million.
yeah, I was gonna say 1 point. Well, that's half of what you're just talking about
Get
generating.
back to tipping fees.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, right, a combination.
Mhm.
I think personally, I think that would be more palatable, and fair and more.
I think it's more fair,
Right, more fair.
especially if, when you have a unit. I don't think anybody's gonna scream over $35 for the year.
Right.
I mean, there'll be some people because sure, but most people are gonna be like, oh, what's that on my tax bill? Say they would get a phone
Yeah,
call.
yeah,
Lots of them.
I already get them. So they, just so you know, that wouldn't happen immediately because we would have to wait until the next March 1st taxable status
Mhm.
date. So the soonest that it could be hitting folks' tax bills would be what, January of 2026? It'd be the 2026 town and county
Mhm.
bills.
Mhm.
Just FYI.
Hey, you could use that though start building the reserve. Maybe you can do the tipping fees to help on the operating side and then earmark this to help on the reserve side.
Mhm.
Because we're not worried as much about building a reserve today. It's more of a future thing. So
Mhm.
maybe you can do a combination of both.
Belt and suspenders. There's right, not one approach. There's nothing, right? We are looking at efficiencies and we work with our team to be as efficient as we can. We look at services to make sure the services we're providing are what the community really wants and values. Right? So how do you do all these things? And we can't put all of our weight just on tip fees. We can't, right? With belt and suspenders. This way, if one thing slides or, right, we don't hit our targets or something else pops up as we will hear later into our community as other options as we work to minimize waste, right? How do we continue to fund the other programs that currently waste pays for? Right? Recycling, our efforts to recycle and continue to make them free.
Are you there?
Right? We put all that burden on the waste stream to pay for recycling. So this is a belt and suspenders approach.
What's Okra charging for recyclables?
It is $35 a ton tipped at Waste Management Recycle America in Liverpool.
We have zero, right?
We're zero.
So we could do that. That could be done immediately, right?
Mhm.
That could be done without waiting.
Mhm.
That would be a direct. Do we have any projections on how much that would generate?
Yes, that's less than $100,000.
Okay, so it's minor. Yeah, okay, but. Yeah, I don't know.
And we don't know exactly how our recycling total volume is going to look right now with Syracuse haulers taking over HR, who handles their recycling themselves. Bert Adams is getting a bigger influence on the Southern Tier, who handles his recyclables through Norwich. So our tonnage at the MRF continues to go down.
And I want to go back to that because every time I look at the budget, I think, oh my God, we're losing so much money doing this. Is there some other alternative rather than have this contract with ARC? And, is there another way? Because we're just losing money doing it. So is there some other way to?
The county has looked at this historically in the 90s and again in the early 2000s. Years ago, I believe it was right after the flow control laws, the county initiated a RFB and nobody actually supplied a bid to operate the facility. And it's just because of the economy of scale. By the solid waste regulation set up in 1988, the law by the DEC, and then again by our our comprehensive solid waste management plan, we have to provide recycling support mechanisms. But that could look like, again, providing the private haulers an opportunity to either come to us or go to other private entities, whether they drive to Liverpool or they drive to Utica. Is there a better partnership with Oneida Herkimer for our recycling? But then again, we have to put to the value to right. We support ARC and NYSED as a county. And what value do we put to that work, that labor force that we also support?
To me, and I've always felt this, it's just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. We're trying to do two things at once and it's not possible. So I would like us to seriously explore an alternative, whether that's, I think that Casella was just going to gather up the recyclables and take them someplace else, right? They were going to collect them in Madison County when they showed up. I don't remember exactly. What
So
were they
that
gonna
would
do?
be a transfer operation. So
Right.
there'd still be a cost. There's about a $30 a ton, by the time it hits the floor, gets pushed through the building. Using a loader, you got to do some changes in the MRF. There's
Yeah.
about a $30 a ton cost to get it in a trailer. Then to take it to a recycling facility, they all are charging roughly $90 a ton tip fee at a MRF. Whether that's Albany, whether that's Syracuse, whether that's, downstate, Buffalo, backhaul. There's still a tip fee at a MRF, and then they do a commodity share with you to lower that. So you're still going to have a net cost. Is that net cost going to be less than our contract with ARC? And I've done that math since I've been here, and I cannot get our costs below what ARC is doing it for us,
Okay.
other than directing haulers to take it elsewhere and only handling our material. And that's what Steuben County does.
So that would just reduce the amount
Mhm.
of material that goes through the transfer station.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yep.
Right.
So we would only handle our stuff collected from the transfer stations and then send it elsewhere.
I mean, I, I appreciate the fact you've done the math, but could you share it with us at some point, you know? Like, so if we were to do that very thing and sell the haulers, take it someplace else and what we collect from the residents, maybe we charge a tip, you know, a fee right there so people know this is what it's going to cost. And then what would that cost us to do that? Because I would like to see that as a comparison, because that's a big number in our budget, 600,000 or whatever the loss every year. And if we could get that down to 200,000, that would be, in my mind, would be good, or 100,000. I mean, we got to, is this a belt or a suspender? I don't know what the difference is, but I
It's all
do know
part
the
of it.
difference between a
It's
belt
one
and a
piece
suspender.
of, right? It's only one piece of a
Yeah.
$7 million puzzle. right?
Yeah.
There's still 6 other pieces.
Maybe we could have Greg come back next month with a hybrid approach to tipping fees plus the Tompkins / Otsego County model,
Right.
and, kind of back those tipping fees off, add in the user fees and see what we can come up with as a
Yeah.
proposal. Because one thing we do is we do need to act sooner rather than later
Mhm.
because of the fiscal stress that Greg is under in the department.
Right. Well, and you just look at our fund balance for the enterprise, it's dropping.
Mhm.
So we can do it for a little bit of time. And I mean, that's what essentially what I see this is really, frankly, is, and then I would feel like we should be explained to the public is like, this is an interim solution.
Yeah.
While we try to come up with a long-term solution that will make us, hopefully, once we find that interim solution, the long-term solution, we'll be able to moderate all these fees back to a
Mhm.
more competitive level, and maybe some not, probably we would keep a household fee.
We'll go to Jim's point, looking at potentially increasing waste.
Right.
If you can do that and get through that 3-year period, and then we have the resources to do that, now you can back off the tip fees.
Right, exactly. But we got to do something now.
So Cindy, you said at one time, roughly $400,000 is 1% to our budget, right? So to collect $2.5 million, it would be 6.25%. And would that be on top of that would be, if we're 10% tax now, would it be 16% tax then?
Yeah, the 1% is probably more like 450,000 now, just because over time the tax levy has increased some. So if you were looking to try and raise, X from property taxes, then yes, that would be on top of what any levy increase would be otherwise going forward.
So with the 2% tax cap, inhibit that?
Mike, I'm
So-
sorry.
Yeah, with the
Yeah,
2%
so
tax cap,
the-
could that possibly
The
inhibit?
2% tax cap has us looking at next year. I think, I don't have it with me, it was maybe about $1.2 million approximately. And so, the board can override the tax levy limit. It often does. And then if we come in below, we can rescind that local law afterward.
Yeah, that's why I like though that Otsego and Tompkins County model better, because it's really dedicated. Like they're seeing it on their tax bill. It's very clear. This is what you're paying for waste. This is on your tax bill. Here's the line. I like that aspect of it because people can see it, as opposed to just throwing a levy increase and overriding the tax cap.
Mhm.
And that just gets part of the vortex, right? Part of everything else.
Greg, can you come back with a hybrid model for us?
Yes. No, that
If
definitely.
everyone's in agreement of having Greg come back? Unless anyone would like to move forward today with these. So I'm gonna,
Everybody's scared.
no response, we're gonna say hybrid. Okay,
Game on.
all right. Greg, you want to move on to the landfill gas collection and dewatering projects?
Yes, and I apologize. I didn't have any more information to put into the committee packet, as last week was a vacation for everybody, including our engineers and a whole bunch of vendors. So I literally this morning just got an update from BNL on the landfill gas collection and dewatering study that they've been working on, and a proposal. So right now we have roughly 13 vertical wells on cells 5 through 7 that have standing water within them, so inhibiting a lot of gas capture. and a proposal to put in additional wells and a phased approach. We, on this project, we had anticipated, I had done some research on what the cost of the piping and the drilling and all that. I was anticipating around $400,000. Barton LaJudas just came in with a price estimate of $451,000 for the first phase of the project, and about $81 to do additional wells down the line, that we would do ourselves. 81,000.
Oh, okay.
$81,000. $81 would be nice. I can't buy any pipe for that, so. But 81,000 for some of us, they're called slip wells, to do ourselves in the new expansions and hand dig them in. This is definitely right, as we've continued to have some odor issues. I was the gas tech here, as the blue collar HEOs walked away from it in 2017, 2018. I took that over myself. I noticed the static pressures in the wells. I noticed some of the issues. We tried with vacuum and all. And as it went on, they blind out. You have polymers, you have ash, you have bio rock, and then high moisture levels and lensing into the well. So we do need to dewater them. One, to improve capture, to be good stewards, to meet our permit requirements, and be good neighbors. I know Melissa does not want any more calls from her residents. And we have some that are close by. Will we ever be perfect at it? No. Can I put a bubble over that landfill? No, but a dome. But we can do a better job at capturing gas by getting the water spacing out of the wells, to allow more gas to be collected. So, and working with the chairman, and looking at our reserves, our proposal is to get this ready for a bid packet and look to do this year, but we will need to use reserve funds to do that.
How many total wells do we have? So if we have water in 13 of them, what does that represent?
That 13 out of over 60 that are active, we have 18 on the east side that are barely active. So you have well over 70 wells, but not all are active at the time. You have them in old waste that you can't pull much on. And then you have those that are just out of service.
And are there projections of how much more gas we would get?
No, there aren't.
Okay.
The curve
like-
with water sounding and knowing we're not meeting our gas curves and the generation curves that they expected, whether that was changes in the waste stream, profiling, right? We planned on leachate recirculation, creating more gas. We actually never saw a benefit to it. We were adding more moisture into something that we weren't able to extract the moisture out, by pumping the leachate back onto that section of landfill. So it just didn't have the benefits. As Jim mentioned, there was for years, folks, they were injecting sludges and actually potable sewage into landfills, trying to generate more gas when that was the big thing. That went on a 10-year curve, like a lot of technologies, and that's out of vogue right now because of other issues that it creates.
So if it worked well, we would not have to flare off gas. We would be able to capture 90.
No,
Well,
we
that's a
would still
different
flare-
issue, right?
That's a different issue.
Yeah,
We would still need to flare gas. I mean, that is your destruction method of methane. There's just not the volume there. We were a small landfill. The gas curves never met the true volumes for a generator. So,
So that's a fundamental environmental problem with our landfill that we
That's all
cannot
landfills.
solve. Well, we can't solve it at this size because we don't generate enough to make it.
Cortland County just installed their first flare skid now. So they're working the bells and whistles out of that right now. So
What's a flare skid? I'm sorry.
that's the flare, the candle that we burn the methane
Okay.
off. So it creates vacuum. It's a giant fan blower that creates vacuum on the landfill and forces it up with candle. It's ignited.
How many SCFM now are you producing?
We are right now about 375 SCFM on average at an average 32 to 31% methane. Oxygen has been bouncing depending on our activities and raising wells between 2.9% and 4%. Cubic feet, was it?
Standard cubic feet. per
Standard,
minute.
yes, cubic feet per minute.
And that's per day, the 375?
That's constant.
Oh,
That's
just a constant.
cubic feet per minute. So
Okay.
every minute you're
Yep.
doing
Okay.
375. So that engine that was in there
Yeah.
was really staged to run at 800, 600 to 800. Our flare skid itself is only designed to handle 600 total. And it needed 48 to 50% methane. I'm at 32% methane. So we're able to capture more gas now and burn it off at a lower grade running the flare skid than we ever will be with an energy type device because they want a higher methane volume content. So that means I have to hold gas back in the landfill so it polishes and creates a higher level of methane instead of pulling poor gas off and burning it and keeping odors down. So we would have a higher odor issue right now if I was running the engine because I'd have to polish that at over 40%, 42 is the minimum that engine would run before it started burning valves. And that was only 225 SCFM. So I've got over 100 more SCFM now than I did before.
And I think you, somewhere on the agenda, there was potentially a proposal from Johnson Brothers. They were just gonna, and I don't know if they have it this morning or not, but roughly speaking, it was to take the gas and burn it for heat. Does that need to be polished?
Don't know.
Okay,
Have not heard from them.
okay.
Yeah, they're supposed to send us a proposal and we didn't get it, so.
Well, I think to DEC is wanting solidification and their goal is to stop all leachate from leaving landfills. And that they've been pretty public about that. So maybe the future might be to burn off or at least evaporate as much like Pete does with maple syrup. You evaporate off as much water as you can, and then the remaining material you encapsulate in concrete and then put it back in the landfill. That's been a focus of DEC for a while. That would generate quite a few $100,000 for us because that would end the contract between City of Oneida and us for leachate and sludge swap, and they produce enough sludge where it would be, a $500,000 or so of sludge that they would pay directly to us where they're not paying anything now. So that would probably pay for that program. Or you could go to deep well injection, which everybody's looking at right now, which I don't know if our geological structure can handle that or not. But a lot of people are pumping at 10,000 feet in the ground and you get rid of leachate. And there's 850,000 wells in the US and there are over 500 wells doing that right now in New York State. So it's not unfeasible. But those are things that's going to generate revenue. If DEC does push that forward and we have to solidify and not let leachate off of the site, then that's going to change a lot of things.
Anything else on that, Greg?
No, ma'am. Next agenda item.
Yep, we'll move right on to the resolutions. We have the first one authorizing the chairman entering an agreement with Clifton Recycling Corporate for yard waste and grinding services. Greg, can we add, where is that? The cost of these services are included in the 2024 solid waste department budget. Do you have a number on that we can add?
Yes, that is usually less than $30,000. So last year was roughly $28,000. Depends on the volume that it's an per day or hourly type service based off of Onondaga County's contract that we piggyback. Town of Sullivan piggybacks Andy uses in his yard waste site facility too. We handle all the, stuff from highway, so it depends on how big it is, how long, so it's hourly. I bracket it usually less than $30,000. But we did forecast this in our budget.
Can we add it? Excuse me, can we add it into the resolution for,
How do you want it as a not to exceed? What is it how you want that framed?
just that the budgeted amount is 30, whatever
Yep.
that amount is,
Yes, ma'am.
if everyone's okay with that change. Any questions on this resolution? All right, can I get a motion for authorizing the chairman entering into an agreement for Clifton Recycling for yard waste and grinding services? Second, any discussion? All in favor? All right. Then we have the second, authorizing the chairman to enter into an agreement with, is it Gitter?
Get her done.
Okay,
Was that it?
I just wanted to make sure that it was Guider. Okay, so authorization with Gitter done of WNY for tire transportation and disposal. Any? Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, authorizing the chairman entering into an agreement with Jamco Technical Services for leachate line cleaning services. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, and then authorizing the chairman to enter in an agreement with Henderson Brothers Contracting Incorporated for sewer system maintenance services. Second. Jim? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. On to other committee business. Greg, do you have anything else to add to that solid waste and recycling user fee model?
No,
More
I
than
just,
what we,
recommend revisiting your Novus packet. It's in there. You have the model, the law from Otsego County. Pretty simplistic. The only thing I don't have is the square footage, the business aspects for it from that. It's hard to determine.
But we can have some estimates for next month, right?
I will have estimates for next month. Can we? I will
Ballpark,
have
ballpark.
estimates for next month.
Ballpark.
all right, the second we have Johnson Brothers proposal. I did follow up with him yesterday and he was going to get us a proposal so that I could share with all of you. Unfortunately, I did not receive that yet. So as soon as I do receive it, I will send it along and hopefully we can have discussions about that at next month's committee meeting. If we do get it in time for everyone to review prior to the meeting, if everyone would like, I can have Mike Johnson come on Zoom so we could have a discussion about it. If everyone's okay with that. Yeah. Sure. Okay, perfect.
Before we go to that, I would
Yes.
like to jump in with one more item on a positive note. Folks, your team, our team, the solid waste team led by Kristen Welsh there, our recycling coordinator. We had a great shred event on Saturday. Started out as a beautiful morning, no winds. It was 35-mile-an-hour winds by, 8:30-ish. We had to reposition the shred truck to be a wind block, and kind of re-guide our traffic. But we had over 166 cars and did over 6,000 pounds, 3 tons of paper. So roughly 35 to 36 pounds per person of paper that came in. So the event went very smoothly. Most of the traffic, we had over 90 vehicles by 8:30 in the morning. And it opened at 8. As soon as I had the gate open, they were lining up at 7. So, people really love, they get there early, just like our Hamilton event. So it did peter out by the afternoon, as we started getting to the 11 o'clock model time frame. But it was a well-attended event, especially for the morning. So this is again one of those unsung services that people expect and want, and people hoard their paper to make sure they get it to us. So thank you, Kristen.
And wasn't there also another event the week before? Is that right, in Hamilton? Was that the same weekend? I've lost track of weekends.
Yeah, it's just been busy with Earth Month. So with Earth Day, there's a lot of presentations, but I've been out in the community doing recycling presentations at Hamilton Library. I'll be at the Spring Migration Festival this weekend for Great Swamp. So it's just busy with Earth Day.
It's not on here, but I do want to tell Greg how proud I am of the team. He had DEC came and did their inspection. And they did not find anything. And you guys passed with flying colors.
Yes, continuing, our team worked, right? We are short staff. We are not always on, right? Like any family or implementation of any business, trying to keep everybody on the same page and attacking the same jobs and addressing the same issues is sometimes challenging, but they conquered that. The DEC gave us a clean bill of health on our last inspection. So we continue the progress that, this program has moving forward. So, and from the past. So they, as
That's-
a group, continue to do it. And those are the small victories that go unsung, right? They just are expected, but you don't notice it, and you don't live on razor blades until the DEC inspector shows up and you don't know what you're going to get cited for.
Well, we won't sing about it, but we could give you a round of applause.
All right, last thing before we move on to Hughes Energy. I wanted to get a discussion about the ad hoc committee and what the guidelines and goals are from the committee for the ad hoc committee. Any suggestions? My thought was have the ad hoc committee work on planning our long-term sustainability of the landfill, where we could work on as a committee, as the present and in the near future. And give them, at least give them that task of what else can we do for long-term sustainability? Anyone else have any different thoughts of what we would like of the ad hoc committee?
Long-term sustainability, I'm never quite sure what that means, but I think that we should look at maybe taking in more trash to increase our revenue. So I think that could be a goal for certain. There's lots of things that we can look at to make this competitive. I mean, I'm afraid that from a county standpoint, if our trash is $130 a ton and our neighboring county is 65, and you're a new business and you want to place yourself somewhere in New York State, that, that's a consideration, especially if you produce a lot of trash. So, being competitive as a county, I think is important. Having our taxes being competitive is important, because today people are looking at that. If you put a new business in, trash is an expensive thing if you produce a lot of trash. So I think we need to look at doing what we can to make it as efficient as we can. And if that takes in more revenue, then that's what we may need to look at anyway. Yeah, maybe not, maybe 30,000 more tons to bring us to 100 tons per year creates more work for you and more cost for you. And so maybe that whole thing slides up and it just doesn't work for our size. Then maybe we look back at Casella, or that kind of thing. Maybe we RFP that out again. Those are the things that we need to study as a county. We need to be competitive, and we need to think that we're competitive. If we don't, we're going to lose more and more people in this county. We already lost the equivalency of 2 townships in this county from the last census, and that's not good.
I don't have an answer for you, Melissa. But I do think I think it's going to be very challenging for the ad hoc group to have an agenda. I think it has to have some kind of succinct agenda. Otherwise,
Mhm.
they're just going to be floundered and frustrated.
Mhm.
They can't be a decision-making body. This is, this committee is the decision-making body, which then refers on up to the board. So I think maybe it's a question of it, maybe the focus should be exploring the alternatives, like one at a time, like not like doing everything, but like one, one particular alternative that might be of help, whether that, and I don't have a list of them right now, but I think maybe the Solid Waste Committee should just do some brainstorming with Greg, in between meetings, just like try to
Mhm.
come up with a brainstorming session where we try to say, okay, what are the topics we would like them to focus on? Because otherwise I just think they'll be frustrated and I don't want, we want that ad hoc committee to be communicating back to the public, but we also want them to be bringing any ideas that they have. But frankly, there's only so many ideas, right? There's only so many options out there. So maybe it would be helpful for the Solid Waste Committee to say, okay, this is what we'd like you to focus on. Do some research on this. Come back with, suggestions, bring us information.
Clear
Um,
direction. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, otherwise, I think it's a recipe for, we were very well intentioned in doing it, right? A few months ago, it seemed like the right thing to do, but now it seems these decisions are very granular. They're really specific and they're not easy. And it's not, the committee can't make those decisions. All they can do is research things and make suggestions. And if I remember correctly, it's kind of what the gas group did was more about researching issues and bringing that information to the board. And they kind of conduited through Jim Goldstein, if I remember correctly. Roger, right, the two, right? If my memory is correct, that was the way it went. That they brought, so the issues came up through that group, and then the supervisors that are serving on the committee can kind of bring that back to the Solid Waste Committee. So it was more like a research and an R&D kind of idea generating a group. So those are my thoughts, but I feel like we as a group need to really look at all those, what are the potential alternatives, and then
Mhm.
put them on a list and say, okay, 1 through
Go.
3 are the best. Let's go, let them go at that.
Yeah, I think before you just say, hey, you guys get together and talk about long-term stuff. I think this committee getting together with Greg and coming up with some tasks. These are your tasks, clear. Research, come back to us. I think that's a great idea.
Mhm.
And
You and I talked about that last Friday about the ad hoc committee and what does it look like and what are the goals? And I think that's a really good start. Just sit down with this committee and Greg to assign some tasks and then bring them together and say, here's what we have. Go do it.
And we also need to, and myself included, need to revisit our comprehensive solid waste management plan. That's our 10-year plan that the DEC has blessed. So we got to start with that framework and look what may have to be modified within that, because we may have to resubmit a new overarching plan on how all this fits in. And that's engaging that committee, the ad hoc committee, into that may be a good point. That's the starting point, because that is your overall guideline that's approved by the state.
You're very familiar with that, but I certainly am not, even though I've been sitting on this committee for a long time. So maybe we should start by having the committee read through it and review it. So we're all familiar. So essentially it's what we promised the state we would do. And if we choose, and if any new path, even a new permit application, we would have to modify our.
Yes, we'd bounce it off the state to see if it has to modify our solid waste management plan.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay.
All right.
You want to put together a brainstorming session?
Yeah, can we do it before our,
Whenever you guys want.
Yeah.
Whenever you guys want to get together.
Greg, is there a time that's better for you in May?
Not really. I work for you, ma'am, so.
Does anyone have any time next week to get together? the week of the 6th.
How about next week?
Are you out of town all week? Friday?
It's walleye season, ma'am. It's walleye season.
How's the 10th at 9 o'clock? Does that work for you?
It works for me, ma'am. I work for you.
No one in my town says that to me.
You need more military, broken people.
All right, so we'll meet Friday, the 10th at 9 a.m. here. All right. So the last thing, other committee business is Hughes Energy LOI. Hughes Energy has reached out to us and we will be doing our due diligence to review and evaluate their business. They have a new technology that can use some MSW and turn it into a fiber. So we are going to be really looking at that. We're going to go into executive session to learn more about Hughes Energy. It does say an LOI on the agenda. They have given us one. We are going to discuss it in executive session. We are not going to be making a decision or signing anything. This is just for discussion. It's very preliminary at this point. And so we'll be going into I'll just need a motion for entering into executive session to discuss matters leading to or discuss matters of the financial credit and employment history of a particular corporation. TJ first. Can I get a second? Evan, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we'll enter into executive session. By the way, everyone, this is Ella. She's my intern for real estate, but she's learning today about the importance of being a realtor and having multiple streams of revenue.